Welcome back to Reddit R Us. What was the most embarrassing thing a parent has done to you? Story 1. My mother insisted on seeing exactly what I bought for clothes to make sure they weren't too baggy until I went away to college. When I was 17, we were buying jeans at the Gap, and when I wouldn't basically do a fashion show for her, for every pair of pants I tried on, she crawled her 58-year-old self under the door of the dressing room where I was trying them on. I'm a guy, and the dressing room had a line out the door. Everybody saw, everybody heard. This is so embarrassing. Mama knows no boundaries. She does not give up. I'm just picturing her crawling underneath while everyone is like, what the heck is wrong with this lady? Story 2. Calling all the neighborhood moms one day when my younger brother noticed I was growing pubic hair at 12 years old. My mother made it a point of conversation to let all 10 moms know I was becoming a man, and the calls went on for about an hour and a half because apparently puberty is that stimulating a conversation for the neighborhood. Ended up with a lot of "such a little man" comments from the neighborhood, and a couple of dads pulling me aside and letting me know that no one needed to know, as if I had something to do with it. Ugh. Dude, this is worse than the first one because it's not random people witnessing an embarrassing act. It's the whole neighborhood knowing about such a private matter and also commenting on it. Story 3. My mom pulled up my skirt, causing me to involuntarily flash a room full of people at a Christmas dinner. I was absolutely mortified. She wanted to check for self-harm scars on my thighs apparently. I've never self-harmed before. She should not be allowed to consume alcohol. That is so random and such inappropriate timing. What was OP's mom thinking? Oh wait, she was a little tipsy, so she may or may not have been thinking at all. Story 4. My mom's done plenty of embarrassing things, however the thing that jumps out the most would be what happened to my sister. She had been dating this guy for a year or two. Now normally not important, but for the story it is. He's black and my family is English, so we're like paper white. This was all back when my sister and I were in high school. It was Christmas, he and some family friends were invited over, and everything was going great until it was time for gifts. My mom thinks she's hilarious. She gave my sister, who was innocent still, a card pack of positions to try. Also remember there were family friends there. She was already mortified by that. Worse was yet to come though. He opens his gift and it has something else in it. A box of glow-in-the-dark rubber protection. Mom goes, "It's so she can find you in the dark." Everyone else was like, the fuck? That ain't right. I'm literally speechless right now. Story 5. I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teacher, who would send a letter home to everyone without specifically naming which child they noticed had lice, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent all like, "Yeah, she has head lice, so you need to check your kid." I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice. But kids don't realize that, so the whole class was calling me dirty and saying I infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. I had lice in 7th grade. My mom was really nice about it, but the whole process was mortifying even without your mom blabbing it to everyone. I still get really upset if someone tries to put a hat on me that isn't mine or whatever. If it ever happened again, so help me, I'd just shave my freaking head down to the skin, no matter the length of my hair. Story 6. When I was really young, maybe 5 or so, my dad got into a conversation with the cashier at the movie rental place. I had to pee, but every time I tried to get his attention, he brushed me off. I ended up peeing myself, and he didn't notice until we got in the car, and it smelled like pee. At least he was apologetic when he asked why I didn't tell him, and I explained what happened. Okay, glad to hear OP's dad actually apologized. That's good parenting right there. No big ego and the ability to admit when you're wrong. Story 7. Tell everybody at Thanksgiving dinner at her boyfriend's house about my tween bout with anorexia. I didn't want to be there in the first place, and she just kept going on and on about how I had carrots for dinner for a year until I had to shout at her to stop. What was the aftermath of you shouting at her? To her credit, she was immediately embarrassed when she realized what she was doing and apologized profusely. Story 8. I went to school at an outpatient mental facility as a kid. It was Halloween, so the instructors let us paint our faces and do arts and crafts all day. I knew my mom didn't like Halloween for religious reasons, so I just gave myself a cat nose with whiskers and made sure not to write Happy Halloween on anything I made. When my mom came to pick me up, she screamed at me about how I knew better, made me go to the bathroom to wash my face, as well as made me throw away all the stuff I made in front of everyone. Your mom is the reason you were in that facility. When I think about it, the months I spent there were some of the happiest days of my childhood. Story 9. My mom and I used to try and embarrass each other. It was fun. One day we were at Safeway and I was in the toilet paper aisle and there was a very hot guy in there as well. She held up a mega pack of toilet paper and yelled, "Hey sweetheart, this will be perfect on your sensitive bum. How's your diarrhea right now?" I thought I would die. My family is like this. I'm in my late 20s, so the playing field is level. I was helping my mom shop for Thanksgiving dinner, and she made some snarky remark about extra small rubbers when we passed the family planning aisle. Later, we were passing the pharmacy, so I faked an untied shoe while she walked ahead. Once she got a good distance away, I shouted, "Hey mom, the extra large tampons, right?" as I pointed to the tampon section, then nonchalantly explained to the shocked couple standing next to me that it wasn't my fault that I was a massive baby. Story 10. In like 5th grade, there was this girl I was friends with and we would always joke around and make fun of each other. So one day my mom was picking me up from school and me and the girl were walking out together and she said, "See you tomorrow, Dumbo." I had big ears as a kid. Thankfully I grew into them. My mom heard her say that and wasn't having any of it. She stormed over and started yelling at her, saying things like, "Don't ever talk to my kid like that again. How would you like it if kids made fun of the freckles on your face?" She started bawling. I was so freaking embarrassed my mom was yelling at this innocent little girl in front of dozens of kids. We left and I didn't talk to my mom at all on our way home. Thanks mom, I love you, but that was mean. Mother bear instincts kicked in that day, and unfortunately, that little girl was the victim. I was gonna say, I wonder how come OP didn't stop their mom, but I realized that I answered my own question already. Nothing is stopping mother bear instincts. Story 11. I have aggressive Crohn's that started showing up around 8th grade. My mom took me to all of my doctor appointments, which were all pretty embarrassing because no teenage boy wants their mom involved in their butt-related illness. One particular visit, we were about halfway through the appointment when she whipped out a Cool Whip tub. Turns out the previous night I used the bathroom and it didn't go all the way down. So she thought it would be helpful to load that up in our poor people Tupperware and haul it on into the doctor so he could look it over. He had the confused, "What am I supposed to do with poop in the Cool Whip tub?" face for a good 5 to 10 seconds, then politely dismissed it. Who'd have thought that there isn't any medical knowledge to be gained from fishing poop out of the toilet, refrigerating it overnight, and scooping it up for an office visit? Oh my god, this reminds me of this time I was caring for this 12-year-old girl and her mom. I'm an ER nurse, and mom had brought her daughter in for constipation. Mom was really over the top with worry, but it's her kid, so I cut her some slack. So I give the girl an enema, ask her to try to hold it for 20 minutes if possible. Then I leave the bedside to check on another patient. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the girl doing the butt cheeks clenched sprint for the bathroom, mom trailing behind. Then I hear some shrieking coming from the bathroom. As it turned out, the enema was enormously successful. This petite 12-year-old girl had produced a poop as big as my arm, and the mom freaked out, fished the monster turd out of the toilet, and chased the doctor through the department, insisting the doctor look at the size of it, and screaming that this anaconda-like caca must have caused internal damage or something. The poor daughter was sobbing in the bathroom. No pain, mostly from embarrassment. The doctor trying to get away from mom and the giant poop, and me chasing mom with an empty bedpan, insisting she put the turd in there instead of her hands. Story 12. She Googles my boss's phone number, called him in his office, asked him to put me on the phone. In his office. I was in a meeting with the client. I didn't answer her call on my cell phone in the middle of a workday. She wanted to complain about my stepfather and wanted to talk now. No emergency or anything. She just wanted to talk and gave 0 Fs, and that's the day my boss and pretty much the entire company lost respect for me, when the mom of their coworker called him on his boss's phone to talk about personal matters. A few months later, I resigned. There was nowhere to go in that place anymore. My mother did this to me when I was 18. She turned up at my job on my day off and talked to my boss about all her personal problems while being really clingy and trying to win his approval and start dating. I was on probation and the manager had no time for that crap, so I got a call to not come back. I had no idea that it happened at the time, and it wasn't until I was a few weeks into looking for work that she decided to tell me all about it. She had always done embarrassing stuff like that my whole life, but that's when I realized she would mess up my chances at my livelihood and a decent career. So I never let her find out where I worked ever again. Not the name or anything that could be used to track it down. I wouldn't even tell my relatives specifics if I thought they might let it slip. I also didn't live with her, so she couldn't read my mail or pay stubs either. Story 13. When I was in my early 20s and living at home, my father took a business call for me. People say we sound exactly alike on the phone, so when he was mistaken for me, he ran with it and was a jerk to the caller. I probably lost out on a low 4-figure amount of money because of it. I used to think it was because he didn't approve of who I was dating at the time, but after events in recent years, I think he was just letting his a-hole side shine because of the opportunity to do so. What a D move by OP's dad. Messing with the person's bread is a big no-no. Story 14. I've mentioned it before, but when I was 11, I was taken in for questioning regarding drug distribution out of our house. My dad had marijuana growing in the basement, and he used and sold it to neighbors and friends. When the police raided the house, my dad was at work. They asked me if I knew what was in the room. Because I had knowledge of it, I guess it was enough to bring me in for questioning. Even cuffed me and everything. My dad didn't show up for almost 8 more hours. As you can imagine, in a small town like the one I grew up in, people talked, and I lived next to a massive apartment complex. I was the talk of town for almost 2 years because of it. The cops really thought an 11-year-old was an accomplice to drug distribution. That's tough. I feel bad for OP because he must have dealt with so much unwanted attention for his age. Story 15. When I was a senior in high school, I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come jumpstart my car. Now my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Dude rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was a time a few years earlier that my mother had sent him up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts. My 14-year-old will not stop playing Fortnite at any given chance. He doesn't want to go to bed, he doesn't want to do his homework, etc. I picked him up from school the other day and decided to have fun with it. I pulled up in the van, got out, and stood by the passenger door as the school was letting out. The second I saw him come out the door, I yell, "Hey Jacob!" which gets the attention of like 300 kids filing out of the school. I immediately started doing that Fortnite floss dance, which I have seen him do. Swung it 5 or 6 times, then finished with an epic dab. The crowd responded with the whoa and tons of laughter. I then bowed and opened the passenger door like a chauffeur. When he got in, I said, "Man, I tried that Fortnite thing you play and I can see why you like it so much." He seems to have played a lot less lately. Story 16. When I was young, we had a pajama day at school, but I always just wore boxers to sleep. Well, obviously a kid can't show up to school in just underwear, but I was too little/dumb to understand that. Why my mom allowed me to go and even drove me there, I have no idea. It was the most embarrassing day of my life, and the school had to call my parents to come pick me up halfway through the day. Edit to answer some questions. I was in elementary school, but I can't remember if it was 1st or 2nd grade, and the school didn't notice or care until halfway because I was eating lunch in the cafeteria and kids were staring at me. Some adult must have noticed then. Story 17. My mom was pretty messed up, so I have an endless list. The one that comes to mind right now is the time she sent me to go pick up my younger brother from the pool. I, being a 13-year-old active kid, joined him and started playing with his friends instead. I guess she got tired of waiting for me and decided to come to the pool to check up on us. She came and found me in the pool. Yes, wearing regular clothes, shame on me. Playing Marco Polo with the guys. She yelled my name, took her slipper off, and threw it on my head. Then she went on calling me a sloot for swimming with guys. Every guy there went quiet. I think the silence was one of the most unbearable things. Still prickles my skin when I think about it. I was so embarrassed. I remember that walk home, my head down in shame. Can't believe I actually thought I did something wrong. Cried myself to sleep. What's funny is she didn't even ask my brother to come back with us. F you, mom. I'm glad our relationship is better now, but you made my childhood a nightmare. F you. Story 18. My dad, influenced partly by Bad Boys 2, decided to mess with my boyfriend on my first date by acting like a hard A. He filled a whiskey bottle with tea, and when he answered the door, he chugged the whole thing while staring my boyfriend down, then tried to break the bottle over his own head. The date was canceled due to the hospital trip, and I became known as a girl with the insane father. Don't concuss yourself this time became the running joke once I was able to get a date again. Story 19. When I was 5 or so, my pre-K did a play based on Noah's Ark. We were instructed that our costume was supposed to be raincoats, rain boots, and an umbrella. I didn't have any of those things, but begged my dad to get me at least one of them so I'd fit in and follow the guidelines. Fast forward the night of the play, I'm frantically scanning the audience because my dad is always late. He finally shows up and brings me a life jacket. I had to stand up there with all the kids in their little raincoats in a life jacket. I was really embarrassed. Dad's defense was that I was the only kid who would have survived the flood. I can laugh now, but I sure wasn't laughing then. Story 20. When I was a senior in college, I was working a part-time job. They offered to make my current position full-time once I graduated. Before I got a chance to respond, my father found out and contacted my supervisor, expressing concerns about the offer and the fact I was still in college. How my father found out still boggles my mind, but when my supervisor told me that my dad called him was probably the most embarrassing thing either of my parents have done. I spoke to my parents a few months after it happened, and the only thing they considered wrong with the situation was that my supervisor told me my dad called. Another story for your entertainment. When I was in 7th grade and went to a youth conference with my church, all students got a free t-shirt and people were signing each other's names on them. This one girl signed mine, dotted the I with a heart, and left her number. Well, I get home, my mom is doing my laundry and finds said number. Yup, you guessed it. My mother called the number and told the girl I needed to focus on education and didn't have time for girls. Both of OP's parents are D blockers, man. I think the dad story is worse though because OP was already a senior in college at the time, so he's able to make his own decisions. This was related to his career as well, which obviously he was doing more than fine if they offered him to be converted full time. Can you imagine how embarrassing it would be if your parent called up your workplace to discuss your career? Yeesh. Thanks for watching and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more crazy Reddit stories.